Hello, everybody. Welcome to SJU. We're going to be talking about horror of the decade.
I just made the body snatchers noise because I'm so pumped about it.
The Donald Sutherland point. So this is going to be exciting. We're going to be talking about the greatest horror of the 2010s as this decade comes to a close. Yeah. And to keep it brief, because look, there was a lot. There was a lot of good horror on TV and in movies. We're doing both. So we're keeping our selections tight. We're keeping it to 2. But before we get into our selections, first introducing the panel. Hello, I'm Cameron Rice, joined by
Robbie Silverman,
Vanessa Gritton,
and Greer.
And so, guys, let's talk about the decade of horror. Any trends we saw, anything we want to see continue, anything we're kind of maybe isn't happening that we're okay with going like, good job 2010, you tried that.
No, yeah, let's talk about what we were talking about right before air. The fact that comedy and horror are becoming the same thing.
They're finally becoming the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup that they've always been. Because we've said it before and we'll say it again, comedy and horror have the exact same formula. It's building tension and breaking it, and they are perfect dance cousins, and this decade has been such a beautiful highlight of it, because we have your One Cut Above the Deads, we have your What We Do in the Shadows, we have your was Shaun of the Dead this decade, or is it longer ago?
That was last decade.
Yeah, it was longer ago. But even like we've really,
I think it's like the prototype of what kind of became the new thing.
It was definitely a progenitor for like the renaissance of horror comedy. Because even then, when you don't necessarily have a movie that's like labeled as a horror comedy, you're still seeing these really funny moments in it. Like we were literally just talking about it. Us is a very funny, very upsetting movie all at once.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that what makes it work is the fact that if you're going to do a genre comedy, you still have to be beholden to the genre.
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of like attempts to make a comedy version of a thing doesn't always work out. Like that's what, like if you're going to make a ghost comedy, the ghosts have to be scary. If you're going to make What We Do in the Shadows, the vampires still have to have vampire rules.
Yes.
And like there's still murderers and monsters, whatever, and like the characters themselves are really, really funny, and like the interactions between the characters, but at the end of the day, they're still murdering monsters who drink people's blood and lure, like on both the show and the movie, they lure people to their homes to murder them. Like that is a thing that they're still monsters.
It acknowledges the mythos, but also plays with it.
Yeah,
I think
that's what Shaun of the Dead was so great at.
I think the 2000s, the 2000 to 2010, I think that was marked with a lot of remakes. I think we got a lot of remakes. J-horror was a big thing at that time, and the Saw, what's called torture porn. There was a lot of that.
Your hostels,
and also our steroidizing. It's not a word, but our steroiding. It's not a word either. Of
beefing up.
Our
beefaroniisms.
Yeah, no, the beefaroni period, right? Where all of a sudden all the zombies are hella fast, and the vampires are like 30 days a night.
Boom.
Yeah, and I think that now we have like kind of a boom in body horror. I feel like because the effects are getting to a place where you can make which I can't handle. Body horror messes me up on such like a guttural level.
So much.
I'm the opposite. Like it is one of like my deepest. Like I don't know what about it, but it's like even in trailers movies where it's like I'll see someone start twisting around. I'm like, oh god, no.
So Exorcist films really do it for you.
I love that.
Not even like but
so I think like 2010, what we saw was a lot of the rise of Blumhouse.
Yes.
And I think along with that, the Blumhouse is Universal, so it doesn't technically go into this, but I think like even lower than most horror films, but like the art house horror.
Your A24.
Low budget, yes, your A24s, things of that nature that it's like, this cost $1 million, and that was it. But it's very artful, it's very well done. We're going to talk about some of those in our selections, but I think the thing that I loved about the art house horror boom was it took what, I think in like 2000s there was a lot of what I call horror fight clubs, which is the twist was, the thing wasn't real. It was in their head. I think 2010, it's the thing is real, and now what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it played a lot with the psychology of the characters and all those stuff. And the thing was not, there's not actually a thing in your house. It's like, no, there's a thing in your house.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I love that. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because one of the ones that it's kind of off our personal list, because I think that's one thing we must make clear. This section is to talk about the things that everybody knows is so great. And there are our favorites are what we're going to talk about in the second part. I think that's, you know what I mean? We're not trying to say empirical best or anything, but some of these are
these are the biggest hits, essentially.
And It Follows maybe is kind of on the borderline of both of those things for a lot of people, but I love it. And it's introducing the thing of the monster's real. are you going to pawn it off on somebody else or keep it for yourself and try to defeat it? And I think the answer in that movie is pretty telling about human nature.
It's the trolley problem of movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like one thing I do want to like touch on before we dive into a lot of it whenever it comes to like discussions of horror is I love the art house horror boom. I love
We had the anthology boom.
I love the anthology boom. But the art house horror boom brought along a series of words that are my least favorite words when it comes to discussing horror, and that's the term elevated horror.
You mean when Silence of the Lambs wins Best Picture and is now a thriller?
Exactly.
Even though it involves a cannibal and ripping off somebody's face and beating another man to death.
I feel like a lot of people...
In a literal dark basement.
Yeah.
A lady in a dark basement against a killer.
Yeah, and like you could talk about art house horror without poo-pooing some of the schlock that a lot of horror fans love and grew up on.
Yeah.
And with this decade, it brought a lot of discourse when it came to like, oh well, you know, you can make horror something better than it is, and it's like it doesn't take away from the schlock in the B movie because the beauty of the ridiculous or the low budget is that it can come from anywhere and it's fun, and it doesn't make it any lesser than what is like the elevated horror that we now talk about.
Yeah, it's almost more of a medium than a genre. Like
Exactly.
it is a genre. Of course, it's a genre, but it does also feel like it's a tool by which you can tell types of stories.
Yes.
Right.
And it happens to be a story that it's a type of film that goes into, or novel or whatever, that goes into like these like guttural like instinctual fears and impulses and dread, and like that's not like that. Like I think horror technically is a genre, but it's almost more of like an umbrella over a series of smaller
paintbrush.
genres.
Yeah.
And half the time, it isn't even the highfalutin ideals of the thing. It's the fact that we're going to do basically a cat scare. But instead of a shaky handy cam, because my brother Larry's manning it, it's a beautiful steady cam. And we put a little grain. We did some digital grain on here to make it a little bit more 70s, but it's on a perfect steady cam. Some of these things they're talking about as far as elevated is just production value.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just production value. It's not even the elevation of the ideas. And some of these people aren't articulate enough to just say this schlock thing mentally had great production value physically.
Or it's that they don't normally watch horror films, so they're seeing one that like made it to like this like prestigious place that they're like deeming to watch it.
Yeah.
So like, oh, it's so elevated because I don't know all the other things in this genre that are doing the exact same thing that
Yeah.
it's doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Which you saw a lot of with commentary around the Jordan Peele movies. Like I think both those movies I love those movies, but I feel like a lot of people who were talking about them were not people who watch horror movies normally, so they were treating it like he invented these new horror things. Like, no, he took a trope of a thing that existed and made the story he wanted to tell within it, and twisted the story.
I think we also lost a couple of legends in this decade: George Romero, Wes Craven, Tobe Hooper. But we also saw, I think, the return. Like John Carpenter came back for Halloween, and I think he became a big deal. Like in 2000s, John Carpenter was like, "Oh, the guy who made Halloween." I feel like 2010, a lot of people, the Guest. There were so many movies that like did like the Carpenter thing, and I think that gave way to people really kind of respecting him. Scream Factory as a Blu-ray series, releasing his movies, doing all this stuff. I think this decade you can't miss. Stephen King came back in a big bad way this decade. Like 80s and 90s was all about Stephen King, and then 2000 it didn't. I mean, there was a couple adaptations, but it didn't feel like he was big. And then this decade was like. Stranger Things, Castle Rock, things that are his or things that are based off his work.
Right.
Like, and the fact that It Chapter 2 was a $60 million movie, which is like, in movie terms, not that expensive. In horror terms, massive. So the fact that you had a horror movie that was expensive to make by horror terms, and the studio was like, make it R-rated. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing, and we talked about briefly on the Peele thing, just be on super on the nose and be like, there are certain things that a lot of people have been scared of or have thought of in their mind, like, oh, they probably do that, freaks. You know what I mean? that sort of thing that's been in certain communities for a very long time.
Yeah.
And now everybody being introduced to that particular horror. Yeah. That's interesting to me.
So that's the decade overall, but let us get into our picks. Riley, I'm going to start with you.
All right, so my first pick was The Babadook. As I mentioned, I'm probably the biggest wuss on this panel when it comes to horror stuff. I get really scared of horror stuff a lot, but so the stuff that I connect with especially is usually stuff like you said that like digs into like your own internal fears and the things that like you see out there. And The Babadook was so interesting to me because, yes, it's a monster movie. It's a movie about a creature and all that stuff, but it's such a good example of like this of horror being used as a metaphor. So like the Babadook is a creature and it's devastating, but it's also a stand-in for mental health and also like grief and the way grief impacts you. And like as someone who I lost two people who were super important to me in this decade, I lost my brother and my father, and I know like I have such a visceral feeling for the way that grief took hold of me and changed me as a person and wrecked parts of my life and changed me. And like the idea like in the Babadook, like, you know, spoilers so you haven't seen it, but you can't defeat it. You can only learn to like live with it. Yeah, like you don't ever get over your grief. You just put it in the basement and feed it when you can. And that's like that element of the Babadook was such an interesting thing at the end of it, and like it brought the whole thing together for me. And then also obviously of course Babadook is now a bisexual icon, so as a queer person I'm just a big fan of that as well. But no, that's why. So Babadook for me, I think it just hit on something that I was extremely dealing with, and took it in a way that like helped me cope with it a lot better too.
Yeah.
Well, I think it also Babadook does the thing too, which is like it did the because a lot of horror movies have kids in it, and sometimes kids can become precocious or just a little too weird. And I love that kid in the Babadook because it is both like you totally see why the mother like both loves him and hates him with the passion of 1,000 suns.
Yeah. And some of the realities of child rearing come up in the Babadook. Some of the things where and that's part of the scariest thing is like you created someone that's closer to you than your mate, biologically at least.
Yeah.
And they're acting all weird, dude. Like, what's up with this weird dude? You know, and that how it affects you, because it's like I never understood being scared of The Exorcist or whatever, because I don't have a daughter and I don't have a house to house a daughter. But if I did, The Exorcist would be really scary to me.
Oh yeah, my dad said it was 1,000 times scarier after he had me. Like, he like already loved that movie, and then after he had me, it was I don't think I ever freaked him out more than when I was like, I want a little nightgown, and he was like, No, you don't.
No, you don't.
And some pea soup that I can eat.
Because when it's somebody else's daughter, it's like, oh, I'm talking backwards. My head is around. I'll just kick you in the back. What are we talking about here?
Yeah,
but when it's your daughter, you cannot go anywhere.
It's the helplessness of a parent.
Yes.
Yeah, the scariest part about The Exorcist, for those maybe who have dismissed The Exorcist now, because I know a lot of people were like, oh, I watched it, it wasn't scary, it was funny, blah, blah, blah. I think it really is that first hour, and really the horror is more what's going on with the mother.
Yeah.
And that she's going to medical doctors, all this other stuff, and no one can figure out what's wrong with her kid.
Yeah.
And all that medical stuff, and the fact that Friedkin shot that, because he used to do documentaries, so he shot it very cold.
Yeah.
The Exorcist is like, that's the thing, it's more the struggle of the mother that you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
And part of why it's not scary to someone watching it now is because you've seen all the movies that have stolen from it for the last 3 decades.
And that's that Richard Pryor syndrome or Orson Welles syndrome, where it's like everything that these people pioneer is getting ripped off so much that when you see the originals, you go, this doesn't move me.
Yeah.
It should. It really should.
Speaking of moving, what do you got? What's up?
I picked The Witch because Eggers is blowing up right now. Everybody's starting to realize that he's a super genius. The thing that I love about The Witch is that it's really probably one of the most immersive horror movies I've seen maybe ever. Like, I was there with those people and their agrarian nature, and the fact that they were so religious they couldn't quite be religious enough for this sect they were around, so they get kicked off into the woods. And once you're out of the safety of the group, then the woods can get you. Then the witches and the devils and the thises and the that's can come for you.
Well, and the fact that it's a metaphor for like a young girl becoming a woman. And this burgeoning sexuality kind of a thing. And that was the movie. And that was the movie that I remember when the trailers came out. That was what kind of started me on the whole why I like art house horror, is that the thing is real. Is I remember when that trailer dropped, a bunch of movie websites had to put it out. The trailer going like, there's a witch, because I remember so many people were commenting going like, she's crazy. Twist ending. There's no witch. She's gonna be crazy. And I think that The Witch was like the first art house horror movie that was like, no, the thing's real. And now what? And it's first 2 minutes of that movie, that little baby gets snatched and mushed.
It's the movie that I wanted The Village to be when I saw the trailers for The Village. It's like, The Village is a great example of a movie where it's like not only is like it's not real, but then like you have a whole like third act of the movie where it's not real, and you're like, we already, like, why are we still watching this story now that we know that it's not real? But like, it's exactly what that should be.
Gritton, what about you?
I love studying specific niche in horror. This year was the year of the slasher study, and last year was the year of the international study. And this movie,
what's 2020 bringing?
2020, I think I'm really just gonna like throw myself head first into the like Alone in the Cabin movies, because I love Cabin in the Woods, and I love a lot of the movies that it really gets into like the meta humor of. But I think the more I think about the idea of isolation and not knowing what the outside holds for you has been used in horror for decades and decades and decades. But Cabin in the Woods made it both an honor to the original subject matter and something completely surprising. It was both from the misleading trailer. I love me a good misleading trailer. But if you're a fan of the genre and you know it well, it does justice for you.
Right.
And if you aren't familiar with it, it does it in a way to where it isn't like, you don't have to understand all of the references. It makes it feel like you know it as a newcomer as well.
Yeah.
And there's something about it that also combines that like Monster of the Week Scooby Gang love that we have for like a ragtag team. I remember when Cabin in the Woods came out, it was after we had a long line of caught on tape
found footage.
Found footage.
Okay,
I'm okay with
I thought you were going to say celebrity videos. I was
Celebrity videos. I forgot the words.
This is the way you backdooring and giving us your Britney presentation.
All right, so here I presented a PowerPoint slide on Britney Spears in 2007. No, but like after a entire decade of surprise, there's something in your house and you caught it on camera. Cabin in the Woods brought back a lot of like the spectacle and the camp that I loved, but it was also just so smart and well paced.
Well, and subversive. Like this thing, it's common. It's honestly like a cousin of something like Scream, in how commenting on the genre, how many subgenres there are within horror. How many of these situations have we watched? Alone's. What kind of monster is it? Well, it's this kind of monster. Some of this drag and drop menu of different monsters, different locales of Mad Libs.
Yes, and that was also a movie that got stuck in for like release schedule jail for a while there. Like people forget that it's like that was MGM, and then MGM went through a lot of financial stuff. So that movie was delayed like 2 years because it came out like Chris Hemsworth had already done the first Thor, and that kind of helped push out that and Red Dawn because he was in both of those.
Right.
And that's when he was still like thinner, more like surfer look as opposed to like looking like Thor. Him being in Thor kind of helped them go, oh well, maybe.
Yeah, before he got cremailed.
Before he got full jacked.
Cabin in the Woods is interesting to me because also like it has that horror, like it has the horror movie things of it, like it has the tropes you're talking about, but also even the elements that are like comedic in the movie are also themselves scary. Like Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, like in this basement, the idea of people who are treating like a day job level of like indifference to the fact that they're like murdering people and sacrificing them to elder gods. Like when you think about it, like on a visceral level, that's terrifying. Like it really kind of plays into the elements of like the Nuremberg trials, where you get people who are committing atrocities, but they're treating it like it's just a job. Like I'm just following orders. I'm collecting a paycheck, but what they're doing in the process is like literally destroying lives.
I think they call it the banality of evil.
Yeah, like the horrifying apathy of it combined with like the meta humor just made it a new beast.
And then you had good evil Sigourney Weaver.
Life.
As for me, I wanted to go, television series, Haunting of Hill House. This is a recent one. Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House, based on the book. It's the Netflix series that was on last year, 2018. And this was a series that kind of really bowled me over. Like, it really, knocked me out. Like, I was, I'd heard things about it, heard really good things. I was kind of excited about that, and I really loved Mike Flanagan's earlier work that he had done when he did Gerald's Game, the Stephen King adaptation. His Oculus, I think, is really great. And he does a lot of great films about people and Dr. Sleep. He just did Dr. Sleep this year, speaking of Stephen King. He does a lot of stories about people who are kind of dealing with their past or wrestling with their past and that kind of a thing. And it was very interesting to see him do a TV show or a longer form thing, because sometimes people doing the jump from, I worked on movies and now I'm doing a television series, and vice versa, doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. There's a long list of names. I think he nailed it. He totally got the aspect of leaving you on a good cliffhanger, but also wanting you to keep you going. I think everyone at this point's probably seen it, but if you haven't seen it, it's a story about a family family, and that they were in Hill House, this famous haunted house, and they were going to flip the house that's in the 90s. And then you cut to current day, and the youngest of the 5 siblings is going through something. I don't want to spoil the first episode, but it then slowly becomes a recontextualization of all the things you were seeing. And things that were the creepiest scene in episode 4, you suddenly have a Rashomon effect, where in episode 7 it shows you someone else's point of view. And from what became the creepiest scene now becomes the saddest scene.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing, and I didn't really get talk about the witch smart enough, but that's one thing I like about that is in the witch as well, and they're in each other, is this concept of like the perspective of this banal evil, you know, and the witch when the baby goes away, how they shoot the baby going away is just like a series of palm fronds shifting. Yeah. To where you kind of know that something went that way through that path and it's real. Hill House does a lot of things like that. Things in the background that you're not even supposed to notice. Maybe second time you watch it, you'll notice certain ghostly things happening, you know. Yeah. It's these are matters of fact. I love that about this sort of section of the genre.
Yeah, and it gives actors a lot of great stuff to kind of play with and chew on and stuff like that. I think Hill House was a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best things that's done in horror in the last, I'll say, even 5 years, especially this decade. And if you haven't seen it, I would say get the Blu-ray, because they have director's cuts of 3 of the episodes. And he does commentaries on 3 of them, and they're great. It's definitely worth checking out, Haunting Hill House.
Big ups to physical media on keeping the commentaries.
I miss that era where you could always watch a commentary on
the commentaries are super. Most of us who are sitting in these chairs doing this stuff are here because we listen to commentary.
And I will say, there is no genre that takes passion in commentary and extra releases when it comes to their physical media like horror. You have your Scream Factories, you have your Arrow videos, like. One of my favorite things is I can find some weird B-movie, small-town budget horror, and Arrow Video, chances are, not only has a commentary, but a feature-length documentary on it that I didn't realize existed. Yeah. It's for a genre of, like, I want the extra special details, no one is as satisfied as horror fans.
That said, William Friedkin's commentaries are funny and how dry they are. This scene coming up, Reagan, she turns her head around, and we had to figure out how to do that, and we did. Yep, it's very Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, here's the scene that's happening. So if you enjoy that, your commentaries, the Exorcist commentary
recommendations very quickly, especially for semi-horror movies. The Predators commentary by John McTiernan. It's fantastic. John McTiernan literally points out every time somebody else shot something, like, oh, that's second unit right there. That sucks. I didn't know why that's even in here. I didn't have a chance. They didn't let me, so whatever. He's like that on certain sections of the movie. He's like, oh, that's second unit. That's not me. Oh, this is me. Look at the slow pushes. See the thought? You know, he's so obsessed with how awesome he is. Because he is awesome. I'm sorry.
I think my favorite,
if I was that awesome, I'd be a jerk too.
My favorite weird commentary of all time is on the DVD for Dark City, because they just got Ebert to come in, the guy who loved it as a critic. Yeah. He did a commentary on the entire movie. They just brought in Roger Ebert to comment on Dark City.
Why did that make me salivate?
It's amazing. It's because it's Roger Ebert talking about a movie for the entire length of the movie. That's why.
Oh my god,
it's awesome.
Also, Alien, Ridley Scott and Sigourney Weaver has my favorite commentary moment of all time, where Sigourney Weaver at the very end, the underwear scene, the famous underwear scene. Sigourney Weaver goes, and at this point, I think I'm playing it like I'm looking at the alien, like I'm afraid, but also it's like there's something sexy and sexual about it, and it's like, would I sleep with it? Would I do this? Because Sigourney Weaver comes from New York theater, and you just hear Ridley Scott go,
It's not a horror one, but it's either Mallrats or I think it's Mallrats, where Jason Mewes just falls asleep in the middle of the commentary. Amazing. And then people were coming in later, joining the commentary later, and you can hear waking him up, and I'm like, no, don't worry about it, he's fine.
Oh my god,
so good.
Sorry.
Go ahead, and then we got to move on to our next picks.
Not a commentary, just find Mutilator. It's one of those 80s gory slashers. Watch that feature-length doc, and you'll find out how many of those actors are actually just people that were doing favors.
It's full of horror's full of favors. Oh, yeah. So speaking of, let's move on to our second picks of the round. Over to you.
I did Green Room for my second one. It was one that we were talking about before we started. Yeah. I had something else, and then I had Stranger Things. Who cares? We all know Stranger Things. It was scary. Anyway, it's Stranger Things, if you watched that first season before it became a big hype thing, you were surprised by everything. It was creepy. Green Room is another one that got me on a level that I think a lot of other horror films don't, because it's not a movie about there's no supernatural element to it whatsoever, which is rare. I feel like in like a non-slasher film, but like to the point where like when it was said, I was like, oh yeah, that's a horror. I don't even think of it as a horror movie, because I had seen Blue Ruin, which I don't think it was a horror movie at all. But Green Room, like. Green Room is just like it's terrifying, and it's also so for those I mean, people, is Green Room well known enough? Like people know what
I don't
it's
know.
about.
I think
like,
it's more thought of. I don't know.
Starting to.
I don't know how many people actually saw it. I think it's more known as one of Anton Yelchin's last movies.
Yeah,
as
It's
that
starting
kind
to
of
make it
thing.
to a lot of top 10 lists, though, when it comes to like
and also Netflix.
Very
Netflix
short,
has done a good job.
Very short, like synopsis is there is a road band, like a punk band doing a lot of like weird road gigs. They pick up this one last gig just to make some like extra gas money to get home with, and then they find out that the venue they're at is like a neo-Nazi like den essentially, and then something happens while they're in the green room collecting their stuff, and then they basically the movie is like a standoff film. It's very much like you compared it to Assault at Precinct 13,
Yes.
Very
where
Carpenter.
it's a base under siege type film where they are in this green room. There's stuff happening outside of it, and it's very much like how are we going to get out of this thing and how are we going to survive? And it's just so creepy. But I think what really is the most genius thing about it is that the leader of the white supremacists in the film is Patrick Stewart. And it is such
Brilliant
genius casting because he is a man who we all know in our heart of hearts as like a leader. Like everything he plays and everything he does is he's a leader. He's Captain Picard. He's Charles Xavier. Like that's who we know. So we know that he's someone who can be inspiring with his voice and with his mannerisms and the way he talks. And so to take that and switch it around and make him one of the most evil people you can possibly think of as like this white supremacist leader in like rural Oregon, he's horrifying and scary. And it's just and I'm someone who in my career doing stand-up comedy, when I first started out, I was doing a lot of these like crappy one-nighter gigs in the middle of nowhere, and I definitely did gigs in like rural areas in the Midwest where suddenly a lot of racial slurs that I thought were dead were suddenly being passed around like they were fine. And I was still closeted back then. Like I can't imagine I would have done any of these gigs if I was an out trans woman at this point in time. And I remember like as soon as I got paid at some of these gigs, like backing out the door and getting out of there and like being glad that they didn't know what hotel I was staying in because I might have said something that made them mad and they're gonna find. So like that movie this was like, oh, this is like exactly what could have gone wrong on any of these road gigs that I did. So Green Room, I recommend it a lot. I love it.
Yeah, I love wrong place, wrong time stories. It is such like a Carpenter like style story, which is why I love Green Room. But also one thing I want to highlight about it is it has some of my favorite practical effects in maybe the last 2-3 decades. It has I run in circles of like big horror junkie fans, and anytime I show them Green Room, there's a scene that I won't spoil for you, but the practical effects are so real and upsetting and hard to look at, and it's nothing that's like it's not like a Herschel Gordon Lewis like bloodbath. It's smaller and more real than that.
That's what makes it feels so real.
And I will watch people who can handle all of the gore in the world like recoil and gag at some of the effects in Green Room.
It's the reason why somebody getting like, let's say, a letter opener or like an ice pick jabbed in them is different than a laser sword or something fantastical.
Exactly.
You know what an ice pick, the tip feels like. You know what
paper cuts in movies always make people go.
All these different things. You're just like, you know what they're really. You know,
and there's those things that in life that like you have to stop your own impulses to hurt yourself with them. Sometimes it's like don't put your hand in the fan kind of things, like because you know like that would like you're so close to it, you know you could do it. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's my horror movie. Don't put your hand in the fan.
Literally, I was repairing a fan and I had the cover off of it, and I was like, "Mom, the fan is going, the cover's not on it. Don't go near it." And then I watched her stare at it, and it's like she was hypnotized. And then I just see her go and stick her finger in the blade.
Oh God!
Was it metal or plastic?
It was plastic. Thank God.
Thank God.
It just went, and then I called my mom dumb.
Dude, fans are our new overlords. Just watch your fans.
Ed, what do you got?
I got this movie, a lot of people might not think it's actually horror, but it was the scariest thing I saw that year. I saw it at the Egyptian. It's a movie with my main man Nicolas Cage, and it is called Mandy. And the director is Panos Cosmatos, and his dad is George P. Cosmatos, who did the Rambo Part 2 and supposedly directed Tombstone. Some people dispute almost everything he does. People dispute whether he did it.
Leviathan, that's his one horror movie.
Leviathan, right. Yeah. So bottom line, from Panos, I've listened to him talk. This was his way to process a bunch of grief. Like both his parents died, basically, and he had a bunch of grief just kind of sitting with him as his little best friend, and he was trying to exercise it some sort of way. So he comes up with a story, which is basically very simple revenge plot. That particular character, it isn't even a spoiler to say that character doesn't make it to the end.
Right.
Because they do make it to the end, in a way. Most movies where there's some sort of revenge thing, the character who is being revenged disappears. It's all about this usually male's grief over somebody, usually female or a child, being dead.
It's like this person, Man on Fire, maybe.
Yeah, this person who dies still maintains agency through the whole rest of the thing, almost pushing our hero to these super heroic feats to avenge her, and it's really powerful.
Almost like a Lady Macbeth.
Yes. Yeah. And what people don't understand about how creepy it is, there is Linus Roach plays a cult leader, for lack of a better word, and a cult leader. It shows the banality of evil of the cult people because they're just lame bums, but for some reason they know these like Cenobite type biker guys. Bro, these people are the scariest thing I've seen on screen almost ever. When they call these bad guys these demons from a trench, and they roll up on ATVs. I ain't never seen nothing that scary on an ATV. It was so crazy. Just a bunch of Polarises rolling up, and it's just like, ultimate evil, y'all. Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. And I was talking about Panos's techniques. He does certain things to put grain to make it grainier and look older for certain parts, not just flashbacks and stuff, for certain emotional effects. He tries to do a lot of optical effects rather than CGI.
The score by what's that? Passed away.
Johansson. The last name is Johansson. Yes, just
Scarlett Johansson. You're thinking of Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, because she can play anything. Yeah,
especially the bassoon.
I think you mean the Babadook.
Oh, God, I wish that was her. So good.
But no, so bottom line, Mandy is just one of those things where the hero has to become a monster to survive the adventure. Yeah. That's a subgenre that I love. Yeah. Because there are certain things where it's like, you're not going to be White Knight, quote unquote, after this. Yeah. You're going to have to get bloody. You're going to have to become the monster to beat these monsters, and nobody's coming to help your ass. This isn't one of those movies with a whole tribe of people that gets killed off. It's one guy versus like ultimate evil, and nobody's coming to help. You know what I mean? And it's set in the woods. You know, it's got a woods thing where it's like, this is the freedom of being out in the woods is fraught with the peril of being out in the woods.
Yeah.
It also might have the best dual chainsaw fight since Texas Chainsaw 2.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in general, like, as you were saying, like, people are on the fence if it's a horror movie or not, and, like, obviously it is, but I think cults in general are, like, ripe for horror because it's a thing that we have a real-world fear of because there are real-world cults that have like, huge body counts.
It's a real monster.
Yeah. Like, I would say, like, this is not a horror movie, but one of the scariest characters I've seen, we talked about Chris Hemsworth earlier, his character in what was it called? Big Bad Times of the El Royale.
Yes.
Like that. His character in the movie was one of the scariest because he basically just took all of his charm as Thor and just channeled it into one character. Like if you flip them around the other way around, it's all his charm, all his delight, but as pure evil, and it was so scary to watch.
Yeah, just like Knives Out has a couple of actors playing against type. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
those. And if you enjoyed Mandy, I highly recommend watching his other film. It's on Shudder and I think maybe another streaming service called Beyond the Black Rainbow. It's gorgeous. The soundtrack
is great.
Slaps, and it's just like really good atmospheric tension. I can't recommend it enough.
Right, and just last things last. Yes, thank you for praising the atmosphere because this would just be kind of a William C. Martell cable movie starring Don the Dragon Wilson. If it wasn't,
that was like a Gatling gun of references there.
Cynthia Rothrock as Mandy.
Oh hell yeah! Yes, this is what I'm telling you. These are my people. It would have been that.
Yeah.
But he takes such care to do the slow burn on introducing us to the characters, making us feel them as real people before he destroys their lives. And he takes such beautiful care in creating an atmosphere that is mythic, where you never ask in this movie, why don't you just call the cops?
Yeah.
Ain't no damn cops in this fable that we're in. What are you talking about? You don't even think of
fairy tale.
some of these. Yes, it's a fairy tale.
Well, there's a famous Hitchcock quote when he was doing his conversations with Trudeau, I believe, and Trudeau asked, "Why don't your characters call the cops?" And Hitchcock goes, "There'd be no movie." And that's
Simple,
Alfred
baby.
Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, he knows. What about you, Grit? What's your next?
Oh man, this was tough. But I love this director so much, and I love this movie so much, and definitely verse yourself in directors and women in horror, because they're all amazing and deserve more credit. But I really love The Invitation. Kind of touching on what Riley was saying earlier about the Babadook. I love stories that really prey on like the idea of what grief does to you and does to how it affects the way you see the world. And in the last decade, I think we've seen a lot more horror movies that focus on the doubt, uncertainty, shame, and terror that comes with grief and mental illness specifically. You're seeing a lot more as we're realizing that mental illness isn't like, oh, I'm just kind of sad right now, but is like a real beast that lives in your head and stays with you forever.
Yeah.
We're watching horror explore that. And The Invitation really gets, like, Karen Kusama really gets into the meat of how these people are blown apart of the inside by the death of a child. And I cannot recommend it enough, because it's also one of those horror movies that enjoying the rewatches isn't ruined by knowing how it ends. There's a lot of movies where, like, I love them and then I know how it ends, but I don't really want to watch it again because it's like, I enjoyed it, but it kind of like takes away from the impact.
Right.
The Invitation is not one of those movies. Even if you know how The Invitation ends, it's still incredible every single time. And it's just like, it's a masterclass in like characters and really like writing your characters in your horror stories, as opposed to like just creating like what the point of fear is, making you care about the people that are being terrorized. And it's a masterclass in pacing. It is beautifully paced. It's I love when a horror movie is so agonizingly paced that I look down and my hands are just like doing one of these in my lap.
Yeah.
And it's so intense.
Well, to your point, when I just saw it very recently, so it's really fresh in my mind.
Ooh.
And what's interesting about it is, to me, there were parts where I was just like, okay, these people in the story are kind of off base. They're kind of crazy. Oh, but they might not be. Every time it was like, well, obviously this is this.
Yeah.
Obviously this is this. Happened about every 8 minutes and then got subverted.
Yes.
Even though it's a one location place, there's like 3 levels, one location, mid-century modern masterpiece in the hills is the setting, the whole setting for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they found different ways to place the characters in different geometry to ratchet up the tension and stuff. And then when you really find out what's really, really going on, you don't even know what's really going on, because the last shot is like what's really going on, and that's worse than anything.
Yeah, and like the thing that I truly love about the genre as a whole is horror may be the only genre that wants you to feel what the person on screen is currently feeling. Everything else, you're just kind of reacting to it, but horror is like, we're almost like walking you through the emotions of what we want you to feel. And the way The Invitation is done is it adds to that level of confusion and disorientation and not really trusting what you know. And it takes that we want you to feel what the characters are feeling to the nth degree and makes you mirror it.
Yep.
I think, I don't know if I've actually seen The Invitation.
We get to watch The Invitation!
I need to get on that one.
Yeah,
I
me
think I
too.
might need to get on that one.
Oh my god.
I can't wait to read the Wikipedia page for it.
Yeah, and be like, oh, that's where the jumpscares.com?
One of my favorite reductive things was...
Fandom.
What's that?
Read the Fandom for The
Wiki. The
Invitation.
Fandom Wiki. You want to edit that in?
So my final pick is Hereditary. Hereditary was a movie that shook me. That shook me to my core. That was one of those things where watching that, I went to the opening night, Thursday night. Like, no one had seen it at that point. So, man, like, talking about trailers that subvert what you think you're going to get. All the really cool stuff in the trailers in the movie. But there is an event that happens 30 minutes into this movie. And there was like, and everyone, I think, if you've seen it, you know what the event is. And I was sitting there going like, wait, no, that character's in the trailer a lot more. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, no, we just saw every scene they're in. And so I was waiting for that moment to be like, there's a ghost, there's that. And none of that's happening. And it's all atmosphere. Killer performances, and it's just this level of like creepy dread that just like goes throughout the whole thing that I love. And again, similarly to some of the other films we were talking about, it's all real. It's all happening for real, Trent. You know, it's all there. It's all things that are happening. And what I love about it is the people who don't like it, which is totally fine. It's anyone's prerogative not to like it. But it's always interesting to talk to people who don't like it because they'll just get into different things. And I said, what I love about Hereditary also is it did the thing that everybody complains about other horror movies. She goes to the cops. She tries to get out of the house. She tells a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
And none of it worked.
Yeah.
None of it mattered. Yeah. She did the thing that everyone complains about every other horror movie. Call the cops, get out of the house, tell other people. Mm-hmm. She did all of that, and it didn't matter.
Yep.
She still ended up in that attic.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, between Leftovers, Handmaid's Tale, and Hereditary, I'm just here for the Ann Dowd-assance. Like, Ann Dowd needs to be doing it. She's so good at what she does, and it's amazing.
She was so good. And Ari Aster was, like, the first guy to, like, do one of those art house, because I love a lot of the art house horror directors, but until Lighthouse this year, like, Eggers was kind of quiet for a while. There was a lot of people who did these amazing horror films, and they were pretty quiet for a while. Jennifer Kent did Babadook, and I think only this year her new film came out. There was a while there, so there was like Hereditary came out, and it's like Midsummer.
Yeah.
And I think he's already working on his next film, and I'm like, man, I'm all for this dude, just like popping these films because I love
these terrifying family stories.
I love Midsummer too. I thought Midsummer was also very artful. I really loved how it was done.
I love Midsummer.
And so that's the only thing is like I love these art house horror movies, but there is that degree of like, and hey man, you know, take your time. But there is that degree of like, oh, you're taking 6 years between pictures. Yeah. And Ari Aster was the one that was like, here's the next one.
Well, see, and what I love about this period is it seems as though we're almost reaching a 50-50 point of, oh, these are just Nazis in the woods, man. Like, these are Nazis in the woods, and they're just as scary as Jason or Freddy or any of that stuff, because you're in that situation. You got to deal with this. There seems like there's almost as many of those as your child is a creepy demon monster, whatever, or you're haunted by X. There's almost the same amount of respect for the fact that life is horror as well. It doesn't necessarily need a bunch of supernatural stuff.
Or you get movies like Ready or Not, where it's kind of both. It's like, here's a bunch of creepy rich white people, and
Ready or Not was a lot of fun.
And almost mad that I didn't pick it now that I think
and
about
the hybrid, but that's great that you mentioned it because it's the hybridization of both. I think that's why horror is such an interesting genre. Is there's so many, or interesting medium. There's so many ways you can take all the different logics. There's different sort of story logics. You know, there's you see this crazy child, they must be possessed. Play with that expectation. Play with the fact that it may or might not be real. Play with the fact that it's utterly real. What's going to happen? There's so many ways you can go. It's really a hydra.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen next year as the decade moves forward. The new Grudge looks pretty dope.
I love the Grudge franchise a whole bunch, so I am so pumped.
Oh, can I mention one thing?
Yeah.
Upgrade. No. Your boy, Lee Wanell from The Saw and everything.
Do Invisible Man.
Yeah, and doing Invisible Man.
Yep.
Dude, Upgrade to me is one of the first technological horror things that I've seen be successful to me. When I was a kid, we had that weird
hardware.
That weird Tom Selleck one with all the
Lawnmower Man too.
Yeah, what's that? Runaway.
Runaway.
Old movie with freaking Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons fighting with drones and little monsters and Maximum Overdrive.
Speaking of Stephen King.
Yeah, there's all these machines go crazy. Upgrade to me is the very first modern techno fear movie.
Yeah. Good call.
No, I think that's right. So, y'all, what do you think? What were the horror movies that grabbed you in this decade? Anything we missed, please let us know. Let us hear from you. Also, TV shows, any horror things. And also, hey, why not? Tell us about books. Tell us about comics. Tell us about all that, because there's a lot of great horror out there. What are you looking forward to in 2020? And y'all, because you're subscribing, because you're liking, because you're sharing, you got those notifications, you got to turn them on. Make sure you're commenting, and make sure you're hitting that bell for some of the sweet, sweet SJU, where we continue to talk about the best of what was the decade, and we talk about the decade ahead. And also, everybody, you can go and you can grab on to Never Surrender. It's on iTunes. Before it's coming out, it's out. You go grab it right now. Never Surrender, the Galaxy Quest documentary that Fandom worked on. You got to get on that.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's feature length. This is not some like 10. We're talking about special features that you love. Man, when another Blu-ray of Galaxy Quest comes out, slap this bad boy on there. You'll get to your feature length behind the scenes.
I don't really talk too much about it because I just let everybody talk about it. But like, I want everybody to know, I saw the rough cut of it and cried. So the majesty of seeing it on any size screen in your house, you know what I mean, and just to really have it envelop you with the best of what we have. It's really a great piece of art made by the people that you love.
I saw it on screen when they did the Fandom event for it, and then like that same week I was flying home for Thanksgiving, and I was in the airport and I heard something that sounded familiar. I turned around, people behind me had it as a screener. They knew the director of it, and like they were watching the director's cut screen. I'm bonding over this documentary that my cool friends worked on. It was in the middle of this airport. It was so cool.
That's fantastic. And also, everybody, we are so lucky we have this platform. We are able to come and talk to you guys about many different organizations. Great. What's the organization we were talking about today?
We are highlighting 826 LA. They are an organization that helps kids in schools that don't really have the resources between the ages of 6 to 18 really develop their writing skills and really help teachers be able to bring those resources to their students. They provide after-school tutoring, evening workshops, in-school tutoring, help for English language learners, and assistance with student publications. In general, there might be a future John Carpenter or Deborah Hill.
There's probably a spooky kid in there.
There's probably a spooky kid that has the next great horror movie of our lifetime there. But we need to be able to foster that and give them the opportunities to not only feel that confidence in themselves to do so, but give them the resources for it. So please check out 826 LA.
Go check that out, guys. And also check us out individually, where you can find us on Twitter and other places. Ed, where can people find you?
Oh, at Ed Greer Destroys on Twitter and Instagram, and Nerd Goat Podcast, as well as Reboot It. That's my little podcast empire. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Great. What about you?
You can find me, and please talk to me about horror on every single platform at Gritton. I'm always down to talk about it. I also write and perform in a horror comedy sketch team called Night Church, so please check us out under all forms of social media under Hail Night Church. And have spoopy conversations with me. I love that.
There you are. Riley.
You can find me on Twitter at Riley J. Silverman, and I am actually on an actual play Doctor Who themed role-playing podcast. We're playing the Doctor Who RPG, and I play the Doctor. It is called The Game of Rassilon, and you can find it wherever you find your podcast, usually on the internet. And and I played that. We recorded a whole first season that ended in September, and our second season is starting up. If it hasn't already dropped, it should be dropping any day now. So check that out. It's called The Game of Rassilon, and it's super fun.
Fantastic. As for me, you can find me at the Cameron Rice. Go check that out, where you can see me dropping. Me and Grit just started up a Stephen King podcast. So by the time you are watching this, we probably have an episode or two down. So go check that out. We don't have a title yet because it turns out, I guess in October 2019, someone had started Stephen King Rules, which is what we were going to go with.
But with a Z though?
I know. So now we're thinking about names. By the time you watch this, we'll have a name. But we're
Queens of Kings, KWEENS.
I like it. Where we talk about Stephen King's books and movies. And also, so tweet at all of us. Tell us about horror, what you're looking forward to. And make sure you're also tweeting at Screen Junkies U. Tell them what horror you want to see and see them talk about. Y'all, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.